Hello, church family. Welcome to today's Sunday school lesson. We are in session 1 of our new quarterly over Genesis, and today we're going to be looking at the very first week. Well, the very first week of when? Yes, the very first week. And our key idea this week is God created all that is, including humans who bear his image, and we're looking at Genesis 1 through 5, and then 26 through the second chapter and verse 3. So let's just get some context. I know that this is the beginning of all biblical context in Genesis, but just to understand some things in order to respond to our Creator and know how to respond to our Creator, He is the one who created everything. Genesis 1 through chapter 2, verse 3, it reveals several important realities and facts about our God. He's a God who wants us to know him. He's a personal God. He's not an impersonal God. He is one who wants us to know him, and he wants to know us. Secondly, because he's creator, everything belongs to him. All the trees, all the rocks, all the water, all the gold, everything belongs to the Lord. Moses declares this in Deuteronomy. He says, "The heavens, indeed the highest heavens, belong to the Lord your God, as does the earth and everything in it." And then third, the truth that God is the creator demonstrates that he has the authority and the power to sustain his creation. He's the one in charge because he made it. He gets to mold it and shape it, but also sustain it and keep it going and keep it running and intervene where he sees fit. Jeremiah declares that God made the earth by his power, established the world by his wisdom, and spread out the heavens by his understanding. When he thunders, the waters in the heavens are in turmoil, and he causes the clouds to rise from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain and brings the wind from his storehouses. It's Jeremiah chapter 10. And so the Bible reveals who God is as creator. So now how are we supposed to respond? What should our response be? Well, our response should be one of reverence. He is the creator. He is the one who made everything. He is all powerful, he's all knowing, and he is all loving. And our response to him, because of his creation, ought to be worship, because I didn't make the trees. I didn't make the oceans. I didn't carve the mountains, but the Lord did. And he has the authority to be sovereign over his creation. Let's go ahead and begin reading in chapter 1, verse 1, the very beginning. And it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was an evening, and there was a morning, one day." And so we're going to, we're going to skip to verse 26. But before we do, I have a note about there was an evening, there was a morning, one day. And this is a thought that evening turns into morning, and that makes the day. This is old Hebrew thought of how a day is counted. It's not sun up to sundown or sun up to sunup. However, it is rather the day begins with sundown. So the Sabbath, Saturday, what we know as the Saturday, actually begins for the Hebrew people on the evening of Friday night. So Saturday begins at Friday, say around 6 p.m., when the sun would start to set later on during the summer, of course. But the sun begins to set Friday evening. That's when the Sabbath begins, not at 6 o'clock in the morning. So their days were shifted by about 12 hours. So now we skip to verse 26. So God made the light. He said, "Let there be light." And then our text skips over him making the oceans and the land and forming the shapeless void of the earth and the waters that were on it into the earth, and the bringing forth the land and filling it with fish and filling the air with birds, and even making the air, the sky, by separating the waters from the earth from the waters of the sky and creating what we know as the atmosphere that we have, and then filling the land with animals as well. And now we skip to verse 26, where God says, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth." So God created man in his own image, and he created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth." God also said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree whose fruit contains seed. This will be food for you, for all the wildlife of the earth, for every bird of the sky, and for every creature that crawls on the earth. Everything having breath of life in it, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was good indeed. Very good indeed. Evening came, and then morning, the sixth day. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed, and on the seventh day God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work he had done. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation. So our first section is, of course, the beginning. This is verses 1 through 5, and there's a key idea to even this section, that God created all that is with purpose. God didn't create willy-nilly. He's not a 3-year-old or a third grader or however old who's rolling a piece of Play-Doh into a ball because he likes a ball. Or he just, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I just like the way it looks. No, God created everything he did to have a purpose. Everything is in a food chain. Everything has something bigger than it. Of course, in creation, at the beginning of creation, there was no death intended. Everything was vegetarian. It says in verse 30, everything having the breath of life in it, I have given every green plant for food. That means predators. What we know as predators now used to eat plants, because God said that they were going to eat plants, not each other, not the flesh of other animals. I believe that is a change that came upon the earth with the fall of man and with when sin entered into the world. So let's read verses 1 through 5 and ask ourselves a couple of questions. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was an evening, and there was a morning, one day. So the sun set, sun rose. That was the first day. So what is the importance of God being the one who initiated creation? What's the importance of God starting creation, being the one who made everything? Well, brothers and sisters, it's because it gives him sovereignty over it. He didn't come in and swoop in after some supposed big bang and then begin tinkering with it. There was no outside force other than God speaking that caused creation to happen. There was no impetus outside of his word, "Let there be light." Before that, there was only void. It was formless and empty. He and Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit existed in perfect trinity with one another for eternity past, the eternity before the beginning. How do you measure eternity before beginning? You don't, but God was there. God is eternal, meaning before time started, God still was. We can get off into the weeds about this, but ultimately what this means is that because God said, "Let there be light," and he started a creative work, he gets to be in charge of what takes place. He gets to be in charge of what happens with it. What he decides to do, it's his decision. It's not up to us to declare it for him. So what does that mean for God to be sovereign over his creation? It just means that he can do as he sees fit. He can do as he pleases with it. Now we know from the Bible that God is a God of love and God is a God of peace. But early on in Genesis, and we will read about this in this quarterly, God saw that there were some wicked things happening. And so God sent a flood, and God destroyed everything on the earth except for one family, Noah's family, and then two of every creature, so that Noah and his family and the animals he saved in the ark would once again repopulate the earth, because God needed to start with a clean slate. He wanted to start with a clean slate. There was sin and there was wickedness, and of course there still would be sin and wickedness later, but the wickedness that he saw, it angered him. And so because he's sovereign, and I know I'm jumping like 4 chapters here, but because he is sovereign, he had every right and every justification for doing what he pleased. It's like you're molding a pot, and as you're molding the pot, not because of anything you did as the molder of the pot, but a lip of your pot begins to fold in. Maybe something bumped it. Maybe the wind blew on it just wrong. Maybe the clay in that area just wasn't substantial enough. It wasn't something that you could have foreseen, or something you did foresee as an imperfect creator. I'm going to use creator not in the literal sense, but in the worldly sense of creating something. Maybe something happened, something went wrong, and instead of doing your best to build it up and fix it just right, take the base, separate it from the flared end, the flared top of the vase or the pot, whatever it is you're making, and you begin again. You save just a little bit of clay. Or maybe you scrunch the whole thing up, you mold it back into a big ball, and you put it back on your pottery wheel, and you go at it again with fresh water, fresh clay, and you start with the little bit that you had and work your way back to something better. That's what God did with Noah. He wiped the slate clean, but he kept a remnant. He kept Noah and his family, and he kept the animals. He didn't go back through creation. God is sovereign, and he knew what he created was good. It went wrong somewhere along the way. He restarted. But that's what it means for God to be sovereign. He could do that again at any time, except for the fact that he promised not to do it. Instead, he found another way, always knew of a way, but he promised us that there would be another way for redemption instead of destruction. So then God says in verse 26, this becomes the image bearers. This is our second section. Then God said, "Let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness." Notice, if you have the Daily Discipleship Guide, it looks like this. It's got the kind of 3D eye models or 3D eye artwork on the front there. Both man and image are highlighted or bolded. And the word for man in Hebrew is Adam. So can you say Adam? I guess I don't know how to pronounce Hebrew, but I'm guessing it's how you would pronounce it because they use short A's in most of their vowels. The Hebrew for man is Adam, and in this context, it usually refers to the entire human race. So yes, Adam is the name of the first man, but it's also the name of man. It's referring to all of mankind. So it also includes both genders. So this is the very inclusive of the word, or the very inclusive mode or version of this word, man. It's not, let us make males. It is, let us make mankind in our image. Now, that word image is also bolded. And so what it means to bear the image of God does not mean that we look like God. If you look around in any room anywhere on earth, people look different. We have different color hair, we have different color eyes, we have different color skin, we have different things going on our skin, so like freckles and moles and things like that. We have different sizes. Some of us are very tall, some of us are very short. But we all have the same image of God. He made us all with the characteristics of God. He made us creative. He made us intelligent. He made us not only possessing talents, but also the mind to use those talents. Brothers and sisters, monkeys don't have that. Apes don't have that. Even the smartest of the other primates, we could be lumped in with primates because we are, especially the New World apes, because we have no tails, and that's what determines whether or not it's an old world monkey or a new world ape, is the lack of tail. Anyway, God didn't make monkeys and apes with the same levels of intelligence that he made us. We're discreetly different from one another. We didn't come from an ape. God created us. And God put his image into his creation. When he created all the others, created the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea, he just spoke them into existence. He said, let there be such and such. When he created man in our own image, in his own image, he molded it. Chapter 2 tells us that he molded us. He molded Adam. He molded Eve. Adam from the dirt of the dirt and the mud, and then Eve from the rib bone of Adam. He molded us, and in that molding, he breathed life into us. He gave us the breath of life, and he gave us a part of himself into mankind. And that in itself, that little bit of the image of God, means that every person you will ever meet, no matter how old, no matter how young, no matter how wealthy, no matter how poor, no matter how righteous, no matter how broken and depraved, all mankind is an image bearer. And all mankind deserves a level of respect that we can't take away from them, because we were all created equally. We are all created in God's image. So, because of that, God takes special care with creating us. Let's continue reading past that first part of verse 26. Let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. Notice that we flip from he created man, rather, to created them, male and female. There are two genders here. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth. God also said, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree whose fruit contains seed. This will be food for you, for all the wildlife on the earth, for every bird of the sky, for every creature that crawls on the earth. Everything having the breath of life in it, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good indeed. Evening came, and then morning, the sixth day. So how does God reveal the organization and the purpose of his creation and through the days of creation? Well, he created light first. Then he created water. Well, the water was there, but he created the seas. He created the land. And then he put fish in the sea and birds in the air and animals on land. And then on the sixth day, God made man to rule it, to subdue it, he says, to garden it. The words here, the work it, the subdue it, the um the ruling of it. It's not a tyrannical rule. It is a gardening role. Adam was the first gardener. He was going to take care of the animals. He could be the first zookeeper. Um, Adam took care of the animals. He took care of the plants. He gardened in the Garden of Eden, and he had work to do. And God organized it so that he was the top of the hierarchy of nature. Man is the top of the hierarchy of nature. This is true for us today. That's why we have conservationists who want us to be good stewards of creation. They may not say that because a lot of times conservationists are not Christians. A lot of times, I would say the majority of popular conservationists would not claim a religion. They would claim some kind of worldview that is, this is the only earth we have and we need to take care of it. And that's true. And they're not doing anything wrong by saying that, but they're misattributing their role as keeper to themselves. God gave us that role at the beginning. We should naturally want to be good stewards of the blessings God has given us, not to gorge ourselves on the planet, not to gorge ourselves on the resources we have, and yet that's what we do in our society. And I could get off into the weeds here, but I'm not going to. But God reveals organization, that he made a hierarchy and that he put us at the top of it. And him being the top of the hierarchy of heaven and the top of hierarchy in general, him putting us at the top of creation shows how much he values us. So how does being created in the image of God point to the task that God has assigned humanity? We're the only ones that can do it. Out of all of creation, out of all of the earth, we're the only ones with the minds to notice, hey, there's a lot of trash in the ocean. We're the only ones to notice, hey, there was a hole in the ozone layer, and so we stopped letting people use CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, as much or as harmful of those as we were using back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when the ozone layer was so exposed and so open. And we stopped using those, and the ozone layer began to repair itself. That's why we don't hear about it anymore. And so God gave us that ability to know, to be wise, by us being image bearers. And so the point of our task as humanity, and what God did when he created us, was, this is our garden. The earth is our garden. We're supposed to be good stewards of it. And also, God created us to work. He created us to be creative. And now, finally, the rest. And this is the thing that I am wishing for today, is the rest. God did not rest because he was tired. God rested as an example for us because he knew we would be. God saw everything was good, and he just took a break. Not because he needed it, but because he wanted to enjoy his creation. But he also did it because he knew we would need a break. Let's read these three verses here. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. God blessed the seventh day, and he declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation. If we look at verse 2 of chapter 2, it says that word for rested in Hebrew is Shabbat, where we get the word Sabbath. And then God blessed the Sabbath in verse 3. He says, and our text here says, throughout the entire creation account, only two things got the direct blessing from God, and that is mankind and the Sabbath. He blessed us. In verse 28, it says God blessed them, meaning man. And then in verse 3, it says God blessed the seventh day, the Sabbath, and set it aside and declared it holy, for he rested from all of his work of creation. So the rest. What are some things that we typically do on a Sunday? Sunday is our week beginning and beginning of the week, and we celebrate our Sabbath as Christians, not on Saturday like our Hebrew Hebrew friends, but rather on Sunday because it's the Lord's Day. It's the day that Christ arose. So we celebrate the resurrection of Christ every Sunday, especially on Easter Sunday, but every Sunday. That's something that we get together and we celebrate. And if you listen to the songs we sing, I do my best to incorporate not just the gospel as in the crucifixion of Christ, but also especially the resurrection of Christ, because that's what our salvation hinges upon, as we looked at last week with the end of Mark. So what are some things we typically do on a Sunday? Well, we will typically get up and go to church. That's what I do every Sunday. I get up and I go to church. But then beyond that, what do you do afterward? Do you go home? Do you take a nap? Do you fix lunch for a lot of people? Are you busy? Do you go out and run around? Are you one of those who has to work? What are some things that you typically do on a Sunday? So, how exhausted are you come Monday morning when you don't rest on your Sunday, on your Sabbath? Now, for me, I don't take my Sabbath on a Sunday because I work on a Sunday. I'm at the church for a long time. Most Sundays, not holiday Sundays typically, but most Sundays I'm there more hours than most, minus Brother Richard and Brother Ronnie. Those guys tend to work a little bit longer hours throughout the afternoon than I do. But I observe my rest on Friday typically. Because I work on Sundays, and so we take Friday off at Emory Baptist Church. And on Fridays, it is hard work to get me to do anything. I want to be at home. I want to go fishing. I want to do things that connect me to the Lord and give me rest so that I can be refreshed for things like today. Today was Saturday, and we went all day to Plano. We took 2 buses from Emory Baptist Church, 2 buses and a car from Emory Baptist Church to Plano to go see the Prestonwood Gift of Christmas this afternoon, and it was very, very good. And then we went and ate lunch, and then we were home. We were back at the church at 5:15 or something like that. We didn't get home until after 6, me and Grace. And that wasn't restful. It was fun. It was good. It was good to do, but it wasn't restful. It was still work. I was still driving in Plano and Dallas traffic, and I'm really glad that yesterday, on Friday, I took some time and I went fishing, and I caught a few fish. You may have seen them. I posted them on Facebook. But I went into nature, into God's creation, and got to exercise a little bit of my God-given right as a human and responsibility as a human to exercise some dominion over creation and to go fishing. And so I caught a few fish, I threw them back, and I really enjoyed myself, and I felt rested afterwards and at the end of the day. So how does observing that day of rest affirm God's activity in creating all we know and see? Well, if we can rest and we can observe nature during our rest, then we can more appreciate what God did for us. Excuse me. In creation, what he did for us to revel in and rest in and worship him through in his creation. So we can look at the tree and go, well, I didn't make that tree. I wonder what made that tree. How did that tree start off as an acorn or a seed or a pine cone? It's really tall. That's a really big tree. How did it get there? And then we can think about the wonders that God has worked where seeds fruit from trees, and then they fall and they get eaten by various and sundry creatures, and then they are spread out and they grow into more trees from a tiny acorn, tiny seed. And so we get to affirm God's creativity and God's creation of rest in this. God knew that we weren't only made to work. We were primarily made to worship. But he gave us work as a means of fulfilling our lives day to day. And then also he gave us a time to rest and prescribed it for us. And so I hope you will take that rest today, that you'll think about it whenever you're watching the football game on your couch, whenever you're taking your nap, whenever you're spending time with family and eating lunch together. I hope you will think about resting on the Lord's day because he did it as an example for us, and he prescribed it for us. Jesus tells us later on, man was not created for the Sabbath, but rather the Sabbath for man. And so I hope you'll take those words seriously and as an encouragement to rest today after church. Thank you for being with me. I hope to worship with you very soon. Goodbye.